I went over tens of thousands of pages of documents and proved that the election was in all likelihood stolen through fraud and election irregularities.
That's false, but the question for the start of the interview.
We'll
yes, it is fine to talk.
You got to say that. And what I'm saying is that
I don't have to say anything, sir. I'm asking you. The question is, sure. What was the plan itself and who was in on it?
Exactly. And I'm going to tell you that. The plan was simply this. We were going to challenge the results of the election in the 6 battleground states. We believe that if the votes were sent back to those battleground states, that most or all of those states would decertify the election. That would throw the election to the House of Representatives. The election was still in doubt. The remedy was for Vice President Pence, as the quarterback in the Green Bay sweep, to remand those votes back to the 6 battleground states.
Do you realize you are describing a coup?
No. The secretaries of state in Michigan and Pennsylvania, they were put in power by George Soros. This was a failure of the judicial branch. You keep saying that the courts rejected the claims, but everything that went to the court.
Don't you understand that if that actually were the system, it would be dumb and dangerous? We have an entire system designed to thwart, and I want to say this respectfully, but it's the truth, people like you. To stop people like you. People like you are what the Constitution are designed to stop, and it worked, and it did stop you. Joined by former prosecutor and counsel to congressional investigative committees, John Flannery. Your thoughts on what we learned, good to see you, what we learned from Peter Navarro under that questioning in the interview.
Well, you should be on a police show. That was excellent what you did last night. I very much enjoyed that. Getting at the truth is always a challenge. And you gotta, I've always said as a prosecutor or even as a lawyer, that you don't catch the geniuses. And this guy is no genius. But the other part of it may be the arrogance. You know, we pardon people, we do things, nobody does anything. So I think Garland should use your interview as a model for the FBI to go out right now. I mean, any prosecutor, that's what they would be doing. So what do I see here? I see a case for seditious conspiracy. It's a section of the code. It's a crime. It's serious. They conspire. Question, do they try to overthrow the government? Yes. Do they try to prevent the law from being passed? Yes. Now, is there deceit and fraud in their plan? Yes, both facts and law. The facts where they're wrong is they say, oh, there are problems with all the elections. There's not a single fact that supports them. Not the audits of the election, not the court cases, nothing, as you said last night. But they do another thing, all of them do. When I say all of them, I mean those Trumpeteers and lackeys for Trump in this corrupt bargain to try to remain in office when he lost the election. They say, I believed it. Like you could believe it, even if it was a delusional belief. You said people can say anything. It's true. You're free to say it. But in this case, not so, because you're using it for some other reason. And their rhetorical pirouette, which I think is interesting, is he says, we thought there were 6 states that would give it a chance. Which, well, 2 of them are bogus. Arizona, even recently, we had still audits upon audits, and they didn't change the result. But the ironic one is Georgia, in which we have the president trying to change it, and we've heard the tape recording in which the Secretary of State pounds sand. And the 12.
Well, John, let's put some of that. We're going to put some of that on the screen because we have some of those maps as the fact check. And on the one hand, as you say, we got information out of, in this case, Mr. Navarro, a fact witness or more, and we also fact checked him some at the time. But we have these maps we can put up that show basically some of the states he was talking about. And you'll see those. The audits and the results did not waver. You had Biden winning these states outright, and there are independent rules for potential recounts under state law and a process. We were at the end of that process that was nonpartisan, and you have him lying about it and then saying that they would use lies about that to create doubt which otherwise wouldn't exist and then try to steal the election. That's a coup, whether it's bloodless or not. I will tell you in the follow-up, this made news. I mentioned it was in headlines. Steve Bannon is a big part of this because Navarro's telling on him, and thus, as I mentioned, telling on themselves. Bannon also defying the committee, so he's risking going to jail over it, but they still talk about it. We have I'm just going to show this briefly. Navarro went on Bannon's show today where they did their own review of the interview. And Bannon went on to sort of chide him, but also say, hey, they're not reasonable. They want to put out that this is the way they're going to do things. Take a look.
I couldn't play enough of this. The whole time they're teeing this thing up.
But
Stop.
hang on.
Hold it. The whole time they're the whole time.
No.
Hang on.
I'm not taking any crap from you today.
Ari Melber's a trial lawyer, right? That's why you gotta go back and refute. Every time he makes a statement, you got to get up in his face and refute it. You're trying to give Harvard Faculty Lounge pivot and reasonable men can disagree. No, we're not reasonable men. We're unreasonable. Unreasonable men are who change history. We're unreasonable.
Some might be tempted not to take that seriously, and it has a certain style to it. But the man talking was indicted once and pardoned by the federal powers of the person he helped elect, Donald Trump. Now he's indicted again. And they're saying in public, John, that their goals are to normalize this, to make this a prerequisite for being a Republican Party leader, that you will do what they say. Unreasonable men who change history. What should be the legal and public response to that very serious challenge in the elections ahead, John?
Well, if I had a staff, we'd have an FBI agent in the office, and I'd come along, and if we got enough for a warrant, we'd administer it immediately. These guys are talking about committing high crimes and misdemeanors in the context of the seditious conspiracy, which is plainly one of the clearest sections of the code that we could use to prosecute them. But I talked about the facts. The law where they go wrong is they say, oh, it's in the Constitution. Well, Article 12 of the Constitution only provides that the vice president counts the vote. That is when there are no challenges, no alternate. So that's a lie. And what is their explanation of that? The vice president wouldn't violate the Constitution and let it happen. That is affecting the law, the constitutional law by which we succeed after a duly appointed and conducted election. So it seems to me they have no place to hide. And I don't know if, it's Shakespeare's quote, guilt spills itself for fear of being spilt. Well, these guys don't seem to have any fear about talking about the most intimate, criminal, corrupt conduct, including saying, what better insult is there to a person? I'm totally unreasonable. Oh, yes, well, sign up. I'd like to hire you. That's the person who is attacking the government, a totally unreasonable one. And his line was, you call the play, you run the play. And that's what they did. But what happened is on the way to that success story, they failed. They had to succeed to get away with this, and they didn't.
Right. They were thwarted, and that's important. Well, and that's not for me to say, but you're a guest. You could say it. But they were thwarted, and they didn't just spill the tactics. They spilled the people they say were in on it. Navarro cites Trump as in on it. That's big, obviously, the president who would benefit from the coup. He also cites Ted Cruz, a one-time presidential candidate who might run again. This person announcing the coup plot is telling America Ted Cruz was in on it. People have to factor this in and figure out what kind of democracy we want to maintain, which is why it matters, even though I admit some of it does look zany. John Flannery, good to see you as always.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Good to be
briefly,
with you.
Sir. Yeah. 20 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay. 20 seconds is, 20 seconds is, why did these guys do what they did? They wanted the power. And now we're in a position in which we have an attorney general who says everybody is accessible. You have to do it now. A year afterwards to prove that you mean it, to prove to people there is going to be a reckoning and accounting at the least. There should be an interview and before a grand jury so they can't run away from it. And that's the failure of the system. Too many people are critical of our attorney general for doing nothing on this matter.
And Counselor John Flannery does get the last word there. Up next,